I've thought about this quite a bit. I may not be African, but I feel like Africa is in me. I also believe that Africa is the source of all human beings across the planet.
Interestingly, Africa has about 180 billion US dollars internet economy future. Do we know that? Most of the processed food in South Africa are made from maize. They are doing a lot with maize. And now, South Africa has also incorporated cassava.
So I want to take the time to thank all of you that have joined in today's presentation. Every now and then we are here, actually every 40 days, we are here talking about this aspect of storytelling. At one time it was called the business storytelling, but now we sort of like to add travel and hospitality to it because that is a sector that is particularly important to us. So some of the things that we talk about here are how to use story in business and in everything that you're doing. Today's conversation is around the topic of building connection through travel. And that is something of importance to us. I hope I put the right slide there. So my name is Obehi Ewanfoh. For those of you that are probably seeing me for the first time or hearing about me for the first time, I'm in Nigeria and I live in Verona, and I live in the city called Verona in the northern part of Italy. So I started a research about the presence of Africans a couple of years ago. And that research is what led to what we are doing today as the Obehi Podcast, and also what we are doing with Diaspora, and also AClasses media, to be fair. Because this research opened up different possibilities to be able to work with people, connect, and collaborate. Collaboration is something that is really central to everything that we are doing here. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, a priest here in Italy, who we have worked together for a number of time. So we were talking about some of the projects that are going on within the African diaspora community here in Italy. And it was really important as we concentrate also on the ideal of collaboration or working together, because that is actually where we are going to be able to go to places as we move into the next frontier in our world. Now we have AI, we have all the different tools that we have around. But if we don't collaborate among ourselves, we can as well be swept away in an instant. So it is important that we learn how to do that also, working together, collaborating with one another, instead of fighting each other. In fact, to this respect, I remember a book I've read a couple of years ago. The book was written by Watto D. Wallace. The book is titled The Science of Getting Rich. So Wallace was saying something very important that I think should be important to the generation of today, because that book was written many years ago in 1910. That is when the book was written. So Wallace was saying that there is no need for competition. We should learn to collaborate. That is the only solution that we have. Because when you compete, you fight to get to the top. It's natural that you will crumble the ladder that you rise to get to the top, because then you are playing a zero-sum game. In a zero-sum game, only one will win. Every other person must lose for you to win. It's like politics, it's like football. Two people cannot win in politics. You cannot have two presidents. You only have one president. The next second to the president is the vice president. It's not actually a president. In fact, in many countries, they don't have power at all. It's only maybe when something happens to the president that you can then call those individuals to maybe take position. But what Wallace was saying in his book, The Science of Getting Rich, is that the earth is full of resources. We can all win in this game. So I think it is important that we learn to collaborate, or continue to collaborate among ourselves. So this is also what we are preaching here in this space. So we talk about the point that we need to consider here involve personal story of transformation. But I think this is actually what we talked about before. I'm the one that actually made mistakes, so I will leave this slide because we have talked about that before. Let me see where I might have get that wrong. Please give me a few seconds. because I think I have that slide ready. Oh, yeah, something happened to me too, that I missed the slide. But anyway, I will get it later, so I don't want to waste any person's time. Let me open the conversation of the day. Yes, it's correct. So the conversation of the day is about reclaiming our ancestral identity through travel. Now, this is important in the sense that when you look at travel, you see that it's not something that is abstract. It's not something that we are just going there to visit because we haven't seen this place before and things like that. Of course, that is part of travel. It's allowed. Why not? It's allowed. But what we are saying within our scope, within the demography that we are concentrating on, is that we are using travel as an instrument to be able to connect to our source, where we are coming from, our heritage, and all of that. So if you look at what we do with Diaspora and also in AClasses media, you see that we pay attention a lot to that, about our heritage, our origin, and all of that. Why is that important? Well, it is important because of the demography that we are serving. We are serving the African diaspora community with over 200 million people in the diaspora that are dispersed in the world. So for us, it is important that we intentionally encourage this individual to return to their source, not because we wanted to go and stay in Nigeria or stay in Tanzania or stay in Kenya or stay in Nairobi or stay in Ethiopia. The sense of it is for them to be able to reconnect to their source, reconnect to their origin. And of course, from there, other things can happen. Of course, they can return to where they are coming from. If you are coming from Canada, you make maybe a 2 or 3 days trip to Ghana. It doesn't mean that you are going to remain in Ghana, but because of that trip that you make, something might happen. Something might be triggered in you. You might start building up a relationship. Maybe you are a business owner in Canada or in New York, but because of this trip now, you might start to enter into a type of relationship that you didn't even know that was possible before, like maybe having a business partner in Ghana. And as a person of African descent, that is something of high value to you. I'm not even talking of other areas now, like maybe mental health that become very prevalent among the African diaspora. And sometimes being able to go home, see a bigger picture of where you are, that you are not just a small thing somewhere lost in New York or in Milan or in Paris, that you are something big, you are part of a bigger scope. That can even help you to have a better sense of a better sense of who you are. So using travel as an instrument to be able to connect to our source is something that we consider particularly important for us. And this is why we are actually here today talking about it, because it is important for us that we use travel as an instrument to connect to who we are and where we are coming from. And from there, every other thing can be added to it. That is the conversation that we have today. And of course, we can look at many other ways to be able to explore the conversation. Usually, we will talk about also agri-tourism, where we talk about the food that we eat by the time we engage in travel. Because when you travel, you also need to eat. And because you eat when you travel, it is not out of place now that we can intentionally decide that we add agriculture to tourism. That can help us to even bring job or job opportunity to the local people, because we want to make sure that whatever we are doing add to the local economy. So that can also be very important. So there are very many areas that we can go into in the conversation of today. All right, since we're already here, why don't we start with Don? I think you were the first person I saw. What is your take on the conversation of today? Using tourism as a way to reconnect to our ancestral home and whatever you might like to add to it.
Thank you for having me. And with my colleague in crime, Dr. Akechi. So what I would say is the idea of reconnection is a powerful thing, an extremely powerful thing. I've thought about this quite a bit. I may not be African, but I feel like Africa is in me. I also believe that Africa is the source of all human beings across the planet. So I'll just say that. The idea of being able to reconnect is a powerful thing. I know that I can give an example. I met a woman who was from Toronto, Canada. Um, she was traveling to Accra, and she was there to meet with some people. What she showed me was a piece of paper that had a name written on it, and it's one of her ancestors. She had been researching. It was the name of one of her ancestors. When she arrived in Accra, um, she just happened to meet someone in her travels there who looked at the name and recognized it. And uh, and so what they did was they actually threw a homecoming dinner for this woman, realizing that she was a part of the area, part of the heritage there. I mean, this is just one of probably a million different situations. But over the weekend that she spent there, she became family. She realized, that her connection there was far deeper than she really realized at the beginning before she came there. And she realized that that's something that completely recentered her, and her thought processes. It really had a major impact on her. These are the kinds of things that I think are critical and important that happen, when people are reconnecting with where they come from. This is just one example, but I can tell you that, for example, in 2019 in Ghana, when the diaspora was invited to come home, there was an individual, I believe he's in Chicago. Um, he came back. He was incredibly impacted by the visit, and since then he's become a citizen of Ghana, and he has been working very hard in the mountains to develop a setting for homes. And others from the diaspora have found out about this, and the place is sold out. It's a beautiful area. He's doing some beautiful things there, and those are the kinds of things I think about in terms of reconnecting.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And that is such an important point for you to raise, Edo. You see, uh, before we started this conversation, there was a lady I was talking to from St. Lucius. So a couple of weeks ago, I connected her to a guy in Ghana because she has told me that she wanted to buy a piece of land in Ghana for their business, for agriculture again. Surprise, surprise, we are talking about agriculture again. They want to be able to plant crop, the kind of crop that they are already used to in the Caribbean, to take it to Africa and plant, not for the purpose of just helping people, but they want to do business. You see, people in Africa are interested in doing business. They want you to come and join them in this business, and so that you can also take their story to the rest of the world. That is also the role of the African diaspora. That is the role that we have to play as people of African descent in the diaspora. And that is what we are doing. In that my mother, my father, or the people that are old in my community can benefit from the fact that I am here. They don't need to come here. But for the fact that I can open up a gate so that what they are cultivating somewhere in Esan or inside Makodi or some other place in Nigeria can be exported and sold in Verona, in New York, in Miami, it helps to increase the local economy. I am not ashamed to say that is actually what we are aiming for. So tomorrow, I will be meeting again I'll be having a meeting here in Verona for a project that we are working on. Is in line with this. We want to be able to work with people so that we can talk about opening up Expo. Because Expo cannot be done by people in my village to come here and do it. It will never happen. I am here. Maybe because I am here, I can do that. I can also help some other person to travel to Ghana so that we can make this connection. It is possible for us to do. So somebody should not look at it as just a kind of an abstract thing, traveling. No, there is a lot of things that are involved in it. There have been a lot of people that have traveled to Africa from the African diaspora, and you see tears running down their eyes. If you understand what have happened, it doesn't surprise you why things like this are happening. And why this is happening is that as it's happening, it's healing inside. So it's something that we are really intentional about, reclaiming our ancestral road through travel. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that, Don. All right. Now, so Jay, what is your take on the conversation? We are talking about reclaiming ancestral identity through travel. What would you want to say about that? Looking at who you are and the space that you operate, which is the storytelling.
Oh, well, it it really is sort of a two-pronged approach for me when thinking about travel and the diaspora. Now, I'm not from Africa, but I am diaspora. I'm from a Pacific island out in the Western Pacific in Micronesia. I'm from Guam. And so I live in the state of Alabama in the United States. And so I'm far away from home. And let me explain, there are so many people in the United States. There are probably more Chamorro people, indigenous people from Guam in the United States than there are in their own homeland. And so there's always that discussion about how do we bring people back home, or how do we allow people to visit home so that they can gain a greater sense of pride and a greater sense of not necessarily nationalism because we're a territory, but of cultural pride in themselves. And so there's so many things that you can consider about this. Now, I'll give you a couple of good examples. I'll give you a couple of good examples about where we are. There are university people who have actually spoken to many of the diaspora and created programs to learn the language, the indigenous language of Guam. And at the end of this course, during the year, they are planning all types of travel back home to Guam and the Mariana Islands, the islands surrounding Guam. And so travel back home to our homeland is important to gain deeper respect for who we are, where we come from, the language, all of these things are not, it goes beyond pride. It goes really to the core of who we are as a people, as a race, as part of humanity in a global sense by bringing it home. And I know that sounds kind of contradictory, but it really does help us when we are diaspora and we have children and grandchildren who grew up away from the homeland. And so when I hear things like diaspora going back to Africa, this is where my mind comes. This is where my mind is at the moment. And then I will talk about tourism as the catalyst for continuing to promote, perpetuate, preserve your indigenous culture. And I'll give you a prime example. People in Hawaii, when tourism had its fledgling beginnings in Hawaii, these are islands that held their cultural dances and chants close to the heart very early on when there was colonialism within the United States. But as more and more people traveled to the Hawaiian Islands from the United States, they began to share their culture in such a way that it was performance art to traveler, right? But to the indigenous population, it was the continuation of a legacy. And so these two different ideas about travel and tourism really at the core allow people of indigenous populations to continue to preserve, protect, promote, perpetuate their indigenous cultures. And that to me is how we should handle things as indigenous populations, especially those in diaspora, to allow this to continue to occur so that our children and our children's children have that legacy to look back on. And if they wanted to go back to the homeland, that will still be there. There's so many things to unpack, I know, but I think those two things in my mind are really what stands out to me.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But talking about this idea of belonging, because that is the second point that we actually decide that we're going to talk about today. Because it creates belonging when we travel. But you said also something important there, Jay, that by the time we travel, we also earn respect from those we have left behind, which means that we have not forgotten them. Because when you travel, if you don't return, you are lost, at least to the people that are at home, because they don't see you anymore. If they don't see you anymore, they cannot count you in. They count you out. Which means, if you have died, okay, now that is sorry. But if you are alive and you refuse to come back, that is painful. It's painful to them because they are expected to see you return. That is why I think in the years, the idea of return for people of African descent was really very particularly vocal. But even to date, it's still important. But again, we're not talking only about the African people. We're talking about humanity here. Every one of us travel. Every one of us are in a journey. That is how I want to put it. We are all in a journey. And it is important that we appreciate this idea, this noble cause that we need to journey, we need to travel. It is not something that we should be ashamed of to say, I am not living in the spot where I was born. We're not supposed to always live in that spot where you were born. But can you make a connection? A connection in the sense that that place where your umbilical cord was buried, does it have any significance to you? That one day you could return there, not because you want to return there as a baby and then, okay, now you must rent a house and live there. That is not the concept. That is not the idea. But can you return to sometimes meet people? Sometimes it becomes also a spiritual return, even to that point. Is it important? How important is it that this idea that we're talking about should occupy a certain preeminence in our mind? How do we make the connection for those that are going to be here after us? Particularly for those we are actually leaving behind. Because when we travel, sometimes even death can be part of it. In that you are alive, you came here, then you will also be out of here. But that is not the whole of it. What about the experiences that you have made? What about the influence that you have made? How do you want to be remembered? Because the traveling now is not just you going to the market and returning, but it can be deeper than that. I'm talking about the interpretation of that. So helping people to build the belonging. Because if we don't return, at least even in a spiritual sense of it, we will be suffering because a part of us is cut out. I don't know if I'm making sense here, Jay. I'm still with you. What do you have to say about that?
Oh my gosh. Yes. You know, you hit it right on the head and to the heart for me, because I look at, I was once and continue to be a cultural activist, one that hopes that other generations past me continues to perpetuate the culture beyond me. And so when you talk about death, it's real, right? We're all human beings. At some point, we're no longer going to be on this earthly plane. And so what does my legacy mean to others is kind of important to me. What does that mean in the sense of the perpetuation of that culture? And so let me go back to this program that this university professor, he's also the director of the Guam Museum back home. He has this program where he teaches the language of Guam and the Mariana Islands. And at the end of it, when people come back, right, when they journey back home, sometimes they're 2 generations removed from their homeland, they come back and experience the culture firsthand and using that language they've been taught throughout the year in interactions with people. And so it really brings home the lesson for them why it is important to continue to perpetuate that. And so the legacy for this gentleman, the university professor, is that in which he is continuing to foster knowledge and seeking that knowledge from others to be able for a whole entire culture to exist going into the future. So that's important for, especially for people of the diaspora. And so he used to be diaspora. He went off to college, went back home, and used the knowledge that he gained in college and university to be able to teach it to other people. And so that's important. Travel is important. And for my birthday coming up towards the end of the month, I'm traveling to the state of Washington to be able to participate in a Chamorro festival, an indigenous population of Chamorros living in the diaspora are going to meet in Oregon to celebrate our culture. And so travel is important to be able to attend these festivals. Home, place, language, all of these things that we feel disconnected from as diaspora, we're going to feel a reconnection to at this festival, which is not at home, which is closer to us here in the diaspora of the United States. So all of these things all relate to travel and all relate to place and all relate to us as diaspora reconnecting with that culture that continues to help us as individuals and as humanity move forward as a society. That's why I said a lot of things to unpack today, but I hope the conversation I've provided here is bringing some sense.
A lot of sense, not just some sense. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. Dr. Kichi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So what is your take on the conversation? We're talking about using travel as a way to reclaim our heritage, our ancestral home, but also as a way to leave something in posterity. So this must certainly affect you too, because the last time I checked, you were not born in the UK. You were born in Nigeria. So with me, your umbilical cord, like mine, is buried somewhere other than where we are today. That must mean something to us. So looking at travel from that perspective, being able to connect people of African descent to their root, what do you say? How important should it even be for us?
Well, it's thank you, first of all, thank you for arranging this event, and for colleagues also who have said one or two things. I think I have a very will I say a strong stake to mention that I am an African to the core. I was born in Africa. I was also raised in Africa. I was educated in Africa. Virtually all my degrees in Africa, including my postdoc experience, the postdoc experience I had in South Africa. So I can tell you that there's something about home, where we call home. There's something about home that everyone yearns for. I have a presentation here, but that's a bit of maybe I will do that later on. it's where we call home is very important. Our values, our value system, our orientation about life, our after being launched out and walking, you still want to come back to your roots. And it's really very important that we don't forget our roots. And especially when it has to do with channeling of developmental initiative, which of course, we may have inculcated or value system that we have seen working in the places where we are. For instance, right now I'm in England. I never knew I would be Ireland. I never liked um I've always liked the stories of England, but yes, my father studied here, but my father always said I would have preferred to have pursued my admission when I got admission to study law in the US. And this is a man who was, in the 1950s. Can you imagine? Late 1950s when he got the admission to study law. But he came to the UK. And up till when he passed, exactly 10 years ago, I still hear him whenever we were conversing. He said that. So travel and tourism does not change where you are from. And I think the creator, the God of creation, has a reason for planting us wherever we are at the moment, in as much as we are, meeting together, collaborating, networking together in the SDGs. We must not forget. Thank you very much, Jay, for that thumbs up. It means a lot to me, especially now when I'm a bit of emotional and saying about roots, where I come from. And I also want to say that it may not be pleasant. It may not be a pleasant experience from our roots, but we must also have to understand that it will keep playing out all the time. So this is a bit of what I prepared, for today. But maybe later on I will share that, and it looks interesting a bit. Yes. So I don't know if there's something else you want me to say. I am very willing. You will hear it firsthand from me,
Right.
Mr. B.
That's perfectly fine, Dr. Kishi. We appreciate you. We are happy that you prepared something that you want to share with us to educate us. And that is particularly important. That is why we are here. With all your years of study, your research, and your experiences, we are always here to listen, to learn, and to steal some of those knowledge so that we can also improve ourselves. That is what we are talking about today also, about this collaboration, this working together, in that nobody is a superman here or anywhere around us. All of us need to be able to feed on each other. That is how we can grow as a community. That is why it is said in our local languages, everywhere you go, that a tree cannot make a forest. It's impossible. Because a tree need other trees to be able to be put together so that you can be called a forest. And talking of travel, it is said in my language that are you uwade, meaning when you die, you return home. Now, this is something that is more philosophical than just a plain statement. In that maybe you are even living in the United States or wherever you are, in essence, we believe that when you die, your spirit will return to the ancestors. And this spirit return home where you are. So it makes sense now that somebody that is living in Canada in the dream still see his father, his mother. But of course, that is how the head was configured all this while. So that doesn't make it's not confusing for somebody who think a little bit about that. So in essence, what I'm saying is that the concept of return is very heavy all across the African culture that I know of. So like I was saying before, the people expect that you return. And we hope and we definitely wish that you don't return in a bad way, that you return in good way, so that they can pick your knowledge, they can pick your experiences to also improve themselves. Because we cannot take the entire community to travel. One person travel, few people travel, okay, a couple of people travel. By the time they keep returning, sharing their knowledge, what they have learned along the way, the community that have never traveled will suddenly even learn ways to improve themselves. So this is a conversation that is very important for me as a person, and it's important for the project that I've been working on for over 10 years. It's at the heart of it. Returning, that sometimes is not physical returning, but also returning spiritually. Being able to return to who we are. So I think this is a conversation that we are supposed to have. So we are doing the right thing, I suppose. So please go on, Dr. Kichi. Share with us. We would love to learn from you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. And let me quickly share the slides. And though it's a bit of, a presentation which I prepared some time on an interesting aspect, which is I tagged it Tech Africa, Reclaiming Identity Through Digital Skills for Economic Empowerment. And of course, today, the focus is on reclaiming our identity through travel. And of course, we must have to understand that the SDGs of the UN is a summary of, every activity that we do, and even it touches on the topic of today. When we look at, no poverty, when we are unable to trace our roots, we could be poor because, when we don't understand that we are people of entrepreneurship, we are people modeling transformation. We are supposed to, work hard and earn and help also our community where we are from to, have poverty in those communities through education, through knowledge sharing. And we know about how transformation is kicking, unlocking through clean water and all of that. Anyway, so we can always relate it. So anyway, coming back to tech ecosystem, we understand that technological ecosystem is also what we have come to see and experience in the outside world during the course of our travel and trips that we make. We've seen stronger developer community. We've seen accelerator tech hubs. We've seen many areas, engagement, connection. We've seen, what technology advancement has done. So anyway, we've also seen technological advancements in African countries. And but is it sustained? Is it sustainable? So what is the role of the diaspora Africans? How do we make technology to be, more like, will I say ubiquitous? How do they say it again? Like trying to make it universal, and so that everyone can, enjoy. Africa is our home. Africa is a very interesting region where I will invite people like Don and Jay to come and let's make a home in Africa. Africa is very interesting. I think were you talking about Italia, Dr. Italia, when you were mentioning somebody in Ghana connected you? I thought of Italia and Kojo, Dr. Italia and Dr. Kojo. I was saying maybe you were referring to them. Anyway, that's by the way. Interestingly, Africa has about 180 billion US dollars internet economy future. Do we know that? Research has told us and projections have told us. So this is an opportunity. So when we travel, we must not forget this. And Transforming Africa Summit in 2023 has also given us that, credence and also um, heads up that we need to be up and about. Back to our roots. Back to our roots is very important. I have a lot of classmates, my classmates in those days at the university where I grew up. Most of them are also in the diaspora, and some of them left even much earlier than myself. Some of them studied there, they did their first degree, and they trained there, so they have gotten so into the system. Some of them they don't like to come back to Nigeria again. They don't want to come back to Africa again. But when I come here, when I look around and I see people from other countries always traveling back, and I see some other Nigerians also traveling. Can I give examples? Allow me to paint a picture of what of what I have said now. Let me be more clear. I noticed that, for instance, let's talk about Africa. I meet here in England. Some of them, they always travel. Those in Zimbabwe, those in Malawi, those in Zambia, those in Kenya, they still have a touch of home. And even those in Nigeria as well. For Asians, of course, my neighbors from India, some of them said, no, as soon as we finish studying, I'm going back to my country, where I come from. Anyway, that's by the way. So I wouldn't want to bore you with some of these diagrams and projections, but I know that North Africa, these are some how tech craft, I call it tech craft, just like we have, the knowledge of innovation, entrepreneurship, how it is really, really needed in Africa. And I will always talk about China and how China is breaking from their educational system, has incorporated that aspect, which is helping to transform their economy. And we are talking about digital economy now. How are we utilizing the digital economy in East Africa? Yes. West Africa, at the moment, the fastest emerging region in the whole of Africa is in East Africa. That's where you get Rwanda. That's where you get Ethiopia. You get Burundi, you get Kenya, you get Uganda, and a few other countries. Kenya is also there, of course. And then Central Africa, we have them. Okay, so we have 5 regions in Africa. So that was why I painted it. And the Diaspora Africa is the 6th region. There's what we call the Hirschman cycle, how development and inequality interact. And we can see it in this diagram. It looks like a pie chart is a pie chart, but has arrows showing how growth is breaking out forth, and how anger also breaks out, and then reform. If there is no, there cannot be growth or reformation if there is no anger. Anyway, that's by the way. So I wouldn't talk about unbundling now. I think, let me just quickly talk about the PET's foreign policy ecosystem as a strategy for promoting tech craft in Africa. I have a colleague, Dr. Beatrice Bishop, who we are working on the PET system, which is policy, economy, technology, and society. And yes, she seems to like Africa a lot. And genuinely, I see her genuineness also really. And yeah, so this is a virtual learning environment where we want to see a way of introducing the precision farming systems for revamping the economy of Africa through agriculture. Yeah, so this is Dr. Beatrice and me on different occasions. I see a lot of similarities, and we found ourselves from something, a way that if I wouldn't want to go into that, but the way we found ourselves, we have that passion to unlock change through the pet system. And yes, of course, this is she's originally German. And how can this system, with all my travel, yes, travel and tourism, yeah, relating it to how are we injecting it, bringing it to our community now, what to, bring about that reclaiming of our identity is very important, very important. So now, and how do we encourage reclaiming of identity? It's through such systems, such conversation that we are having today. And of course, I wouldn't end this discussion without talking about food and how people need to understand that they have rights to food, especially in Africa. They hate themselves. Africans, they don't like themselves. I hear it everywhere. And from my experience, is it true? That's a conversation for another day. Maybe Obehi will have that discussion and then invite a lot of Africans and let us hammer on this issue. Africans hate themselves. Is it true? Is it limiting? Is it a way that the enemy is using it to limit us, to hinder us from progressing? Where have our African leaders, why will they amass all the wealth and go and throw all the wealth and burn it and waste it and not use it for their common neighbors, their common friends? Let me talk about cocoa. Cocoa is very interesting. When I've traveled, I've seen, chocolates on, on the another confectionaries, where coffee, sorry, this is coffee and not cocoa. Okay, sorry. Coffee is one of the interesting products that we see here when we travel. And then also, let me talk about cocoa, since I started to talk about cocoa already, because two of them, some people don't even know that there is a plant called coffee. I used to also feel that way till I saw some grains of coffee. Some years I saw it and I was happy. I'm talking of those who have studied agriculture now. Some of them don't even understand that this exists. This coffee a lot. Cocoa also. In Nigeria, I know the West African region does well with cocoa, even Ghana also, and some other West African states, and even African states, even Ethiopia. Ethiopia produces a lot of cocoa as well. In East Africa, Uganda, and Tanzania. We know, and here in this place, we saw it we grab chocolates. I have some chocolates here. So what is the active ingredient? What is the primary ingredient of cocoa? Is of chocolate is cocoa. And I have some Rwanda coffee also, which I brought from Rwanda last year when I went to Rwanda. I even visited the Rwanda High Commission, the other time in my home country. Recently, not too far away, sometime in March or April. I can't pinpoint, but I was offered some coffee by the High Commissioner, His Excellency Bazivamo himself at the Federal Capital Territory. Yes, so so why can't we produce chocolate in quantums? What has gone wrong? Travel and tourism. How are we utilizing, reclaiming our identity, who we are? I went to Malaysia, and in fact, I'm having goose pimple. When I went to Malaysia, I was surprised that I was seeing oil palm trees in their very important buildings. I saw it in some of the hotels where I was just visiting. I was just strolling, and I began to see oil palm trees everywhere. I would tell you, by that time, I was at the verge of defending my PhD. And I never knew that story of how, um, they came to our country and to Africa to borrow the oil palm seedlings. I never knew. But it was travel and tourism that made me to see that. And by the time I came back, I decided to take a research on that. And I began to see that actually we lost our glory. Sometimes we move to a certain place thinking that we are going to get glory. In the other way around, we are losing our glory. Travel and tourism helps us a lot. Travel and tourism, as a matter of fact, is a very important aspect of education. So you can quote me today anywhere to say that I have said today that tourism and travel is a major segment that must be unlocked in the educational curriculum of a learner, of a student. Also, let's talk about rice so that I wouldn't dwell too much on coffee and cocoa. Rice is one of the popular crops of Africa. That means that in every region of Africa, rice stands tall as a crop that is grown and also consumed by the people of the region. Can I say also that rice, the highest producers of rice, is in India? Sorry, not India. Is in China. You know where my mind went? My mind went to millets because of millets, International Year of Millets. I was invited
But
by.
how do we get people in the diaspora to be more involved in this aspect so that, like you said, no, it can be part of the tourism ecosystem conversation so that they can get involved in this cultivation. Of course, the idea of agri-tourism is not far away from the entire conversation. Of course, you know how much we like agriculture here because agriculture, like you always said, Dr. Kishi, is a primary source of every other part of industry. So we're looking at how do we leverage more of travel in this conversation that you are sharing with us. What do you say about that?
And we have already started to leverage by a conversation. First of all, we have to create that platform. We have to identify the people who are very actionable. People like myself. I have donated myself already. I donated myself in this profession long years ago. And I told you my history, that I grew up in a university environment where, our parents were staff, and no child goes out to study agriculture. It's like a taboo. It's weird. It's awkward. You are looked as someone who does not have his mind. But today, I have a PhD in this same field, and I am contributing a lot to changing the story, the lives of people all around Africa and outside of Africa, agriculturally. When I was invited to the Reto University College, I was sharing my experience on this. So the conversation thing is very important. Then we have to create an agenda. We must create an agenda, and the agenda is like a blueprint, must have also different parts of the agenda. I think we have to continue with our discussion. Of course, I wouldn't end this discussion without concluding on the rice ecosystem. What has to be done for those in the diaspora? They need to understand that there are different strains of rice, there are different species of rice. And longevity, good health, is a function of this, what we are talking about. Some people don't understand that you don't just eat anyhow. I can tell you, I have met lots of people who are about 100 years and they are still living and kicking strong because they have understood this reality and they are practicing it. Not just preach what you say. Sorry, Practice what you preach. Practice what you say. Rice is a cereal. It's an important cereal, and it's very expensive now. The cost is so expensive. And Nigeria and other African countries, they are still importing. Can you imagine that Africa is still importing rice up till now? Even when we have, that means, so how the diaspora now, Obehi was asking me just now, how we can have that conversation. Of course, we can, get some land and have some collaborations. We have to have collaborations. Like I said, that agenda must have research and development, which of course, I can play roles in the research and development area. And of course, the other stakeholder that must have to be there. There are different ways of taking this conversation, transforming it into money, making of money for the practitioners. We need to identify also those who have been in this space, the rice farmers. We have smallholder rice farmers, we have large scale, we have those who are partnering together. This is a time that we need to promote cooperative. In the midst of our traveling and tourists, we have gone to places where we've seen cooperatives work. When I went to Tuskegee in Alabama, that's where Jay is. Jay is in Alabama. I was in Tuskegee, and a friend of mine who is Nigerian, he was telling me how cooperative farming has been working. So using attention to drying and processing technology. Now, do you know that we are not just talking about cultivation? Remember that the ecosystem does not stop in cultivation. It continues through processing and also through the wings of distribution, where logistics plays a lot of roles trying to get these products at the doorsteps of the consumers, at the doorsteps of the buyers, so that it will bridge the gap for them, and they must pay for the service. And that is also a way of earning a living and to drive livelihoods for the practitioners. And then, of course, consumption comes in. And I was, preaching. I was preaching on Saturday. Permit me to use that word. I was actually facilitating a session at the Rome Business School. And the students in the Rome Business School, at a time during introduction, I was shocked. Most of them were PhD holders. Some of them are veterinary doctors. Some are doctors of PhD in the other areas, cogent arts and sciences. And they were all enrolled in the agribusiness program at the Rome Business School. And I had to, do my very best so that at the end, I must have created a lasting impact on them. Do you know what happened that very day? They keep calling and texting. They were asking for my number. Please, can we have your number? Please, we want to talk to you. Please. These are top people who are making moves in Nigeria, I'm telling you, because most of them are in Nigeria. Some of them are also outside of Nigeria. Let's talk about cassava as I wrap up. Cassava is a rich crop. Sorry, maize. I didn't talk about maize and I passed. Maize is a very interesting crop. It's also a cereal, and it's grown all over Africa. So we talked about rice. Rice is very popular like maize in the whole of Africa. And when I lived in South Africa, I saw that they are a force to reckon with for maize production. So virtually most of the processed food in South Africa are made from maize. They are doing a lot with maize. And now South Africa has also become they have also incorporated cassava. So they are looking at every aspect of cassava. And they are working with the Agricultural Research Council on that. I've also been consulted informally on this. And so they have an agenda for cassava at the moment. And of course, the NAMC, the National Agricultural Marketing Council of South Africa, is also at the fulcrum of ensuring that this product is utilized to her to a greatest maximum or minimum or barest minimum, depending on what we are referring to. So, cassava is very important. It has a lot of derivatives, can be used to, it has primary derivatives, secondary, tertiary derivatives. We have byproducts from cassava. Cassava is very interesting crop. You can get flour during Russia-Ukraine crisis when it broke forth. There was we were proposing for you utilizing the flour for making bread and other confectionaries. These are some of the bankable business plans which I also created as part of the PETS. And you can see access to finance. So all of these at the diaspora level, we can discuss about this, how to get them. But can I tell you that there is always the aspect that is very important is funding. Funding, and we need to develop a structure. I've said this, times, I've said it severally that we need to structure some, especially cassava and other products, maybe maize and rice also. And then we incorporate young people, bring in a lot of young people, empower them, create something for them. And then we will also have like a monitoring and evaluation so that we'll begin to monitor and evaluate their projects to ensure that they are doing well, to ensure that their return on investment is yielding that commensurate investment the returns are yielding that commensurate interest or revenue or income of the investment. This is the brain reengineering, which is the baby that I gave birth to. I gave birth to it, and now I've had most of my children, most of my mentees and partners and friends and colleagues have come. You can see it's already registered in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So I see the brain engineering as a factory or as a platform which shoulders all of this that we are talking about, because it's broken down in pillars. These are the 5 major pillars of the brain re-engineering concept.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Kishi. We'll come back to this shortly. Of course, we want to thank you so much for this sharing. It's really an important conversation. Of course, with Dr. Kichi, we have done a lot of video, a lot of interview where he have explained this different aspect of agriculture, the potential of agriculture, particularly the potential that the south of the world have, Africa have in terms of agribusiness, agriculture, agri-tourism. This is why when we were sort of remodeling this conversation, which was previously only business storytelling, we included, of course, we were moving towards tourism, but we included also agribusiness, because agribusiness is very important in the tourism industry in terms of, like I was saying before, in terms of the food that we eat. Because if you are in the tourism industry, you are only concentrating on maybe house where you're going to put the people, which is therefore the hospitality area. You're not concentrating on the food that the people are going to eat. You might be selling yourself short. But imagine now, simply for example, we are sending say 50,000 people to a particular locality. In that locality, we are empowering them to also create the food that these 50,000 people will eat. Just make the calculation how much investment we are bringing to that community. So this is why agriculture is very important, which is why also what Dr. Kechi is saying is very important, that there is not something apart. It's included in the entire conversation. If we want to develop, we can't take away agriculture and say we just want to build building. Building is not development. Development is inclusive. You talk about the land, the drainage, the ecosystem, the food, the tensile, everything must be included in development. So our approach to tourism is not just for the purpose of buying a ticket, traveling to a place. It's all inclusive, both in terms of helping us to recover who we are, reclaim our heritage, and be proud of ourselves as a people, but also helping us to build relationship, being able to enter into partnership and all of that. So there is a lot that actually goes into that. But don't worry, Dr. Ikeji, we are coming to you just now. Now, I want to go to Don Hoff. Don, what is your take? Because now you have heard a lot of things also basically from what Dr. Ikeji has been showing. Of course, I know that you are together with him. Then you have also heard what Jay have also shared. Jay is an expert in storytelling, like me. So Jane have, of course, talked about also the argument from his experience, looking at where he's coming from in the United States. Because you don't necessarily need to be from Africa to understand what we're talking about here. We're talking about people. If you are a person, then you should understand what we're talking about. We're not saying that you must be in Nigeria before you can understand what we're talking about. In your community, I live in Verona. I live in the city of Verona. Agribusiness, agriculture is highly involved in this place. So it is important that people understand it from their home, from where they live, from what they can do. You don't need to go to another place before you can understand what we're talking about here. All right, take it from me. Rescue me. What is your take here?
I just wanted to say, in working with Dr. Ikeji, we both are massive and major supporters of agriculture in Africa. We're major and massive supporters of the whole, concept of brain reengineering. And Grow Mobile, the mobile app that we've been working on, we use Dr. Ikeji's philosophy, if you want to call it that, as a major part of our bedrock philosophies. So, brain reengineering is a major and massively important aspect. There's a different, I'll steer it maybe a little bit differently here for a moment, if you don't mind. I think one of the things that we've spoken about, we've touched on it, is the whole sense of belonging. And I think we've touched on it. I'm not sure how deeply we've gone in this conversation. I know that there are many, many tours that happen in Africa in various regions. I would have to say, and I'm not disregarding or disrespecting those operators. Many of those are basically bed and breakfast. You get bed, you get breakfast, you take a tour, maybe you go on a safari ride, and maybe you look at beautiful buildings and architectures and things of that nature. And all of those things, for some people, that's really what they want. But I think there's another aspect that's missing, and that piece is the sense of belonging. So the idea of rites and rituals, the deep cultural richness that's there in Africa, I don't think those things are always elevated to the level that I think people in the diaspora are hungry for. I have a colleague who stayed in a guest house. She made a travel arrangement with, I think, 3 other colleagues, and they stayed in this small guest house. The individual who was running the guest house provided meals, but not just a meal. He would provide the history, the story behind the food they were eating, where it came from, how it came to be. How old is this meal? When did this whole thing start? And so, he would basically turn the meal into a classroom. And these people, gained so much interest in it that he said, I have my grandfather, who's a chief in the north region of Ghana. And he said, would you like to meet him? And, there was an overwhelming yes. And so they made the arrangement. It's north of Tamale. They met the chief, and he arranged to bring some elders along with him. They spent an entire day speaking of the history of the area, of the tribes in the area. They spoke about stories that are nowhere written on a piece of paper. They sang songs. There's nothing on a piece of paper that documents those songs. But those are songs that are important to the culture and important to those people in the region. They mean something. And what they really promote is the idea of belonging. And so this group of colleagues that went there to meet with the chief and the elders, they came back there, to the U.S. And I asked them how was the trip.
This connection, you see, as Don was talking, the idea that came to my mind is a conversation that I actually had yesterday. No, not yesterday, today. I was talking to one of my clients in the UK, and I was suggesting to her that we need to plan a retreat based on what she's doing. And we are working on that. We will open it up because he is absolutely right. We don't explore African spirituality at all in terms of our tourism. But guess what? That is highly baked into tourism. Spiritual retreat, for example, where maybe a group of people, businesses or business owner, entrepreneur, who are looking for instruments to lace into their approach, their dealing, the way that they deal with people, want to understand the way that it is treated in African spirituality. What about the concept of Ubuntu? We could do an entire series on that, like 7 days understanding of the philosophy of Ubuntu, where like about 50, 30 people can come. They will have a lecturer at the front of them, explaining it to them in theory, but practicing it during the day in real life, where you can meet with the people and you experience what it really means by Ubuntu as a philosophy. This way, by the time you return to where you are coming from, it becomes clearer to you what is happening. So I think if we really look into these two, it can become very valuable, and it becomes also a way to bring money into the community. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, Jay. Looking at it from the point of view of where you are living, where you are coming from, what would you want to say about that?
I think you're onto something there, because one of the things, Don was spot on, really. It's that sense of belonging. I talked briefly about it, but really that's at the core of why diaspora seek to go back to the homeland. Especially Pacific Islanders and people from Guam and the Mariana Islands. If you are 2 or 3 generations removed from the original travelers, right, to the diaspora, you hear the stories constantly at family gatherings. You hear the stories, at dinner time, and you don't know exactly the meaning of it until you experience it yourself. And so this experiential tourism is really important, and especially for the diaspora traveling back to our homelands. When we get to experience the stories firsthand that our elders and ancestors had given to us, then we see the beauty in where we come from, that sense of belonging that Don was alluding to earlier. That's what we seek, especially as diaspora. It's where do I belong in all of this? I can weave in and out of different races and things because I'm diaspora, right? And my kids also are able to do that. We're not chameleons in the sense, but because we're not this or that, something that's pronounced in society as a race, we're able to weave in and out of these other cultures. So sometimes for us, it's a man without a country type feeling. And so when they return home, all of our experiences come together to make sense for us and our future and for future generations. And so taking that and putting it on a tourism board, vision, it's difficult to try to explain. But if we just put it at the core that these people who are diaspora are wanting to experience the stories of their ancestors and elders, if you put that at the core, everything I think will fall into place as far as the operations to get that sentimentality into actual action. And so I'm excited to go to this festival that's here in the diaspora in the United States, to be part of this group of other Chamorros, other people from Guam. I'm excited to experience that. And if Oregon really knew what was going on, they would actually want to sponsor it, because I'm all the way in Alabama, and here I am traveling to Oregon to be a part of this. And so it's things like this that can happen all across the globe for all of the diaspora from all other nations. That sense of belonging, it's a really, really strong calling for a lot of people. And that can actually turn into monetization, but also a deeper sense of belonging that Don was really talking about. And that is a really, really important issue, I think, that sometimes is forgotten when we do focus on the monetization part. And with Dr. Akechi and what he was talking about, I'm part of a nature center in Georgia, and not the country, but the state. And so at this nature center, we are propagating plants, native plants that are helping to put back into the ecosystem some of the things that need to be there. And so, we see birds going to these plants. We see, insects taking the pollen and going to other plants. And so these types of things, when you introduce things that are not native to some environments, especially on a commercial scale, it can actually be a detriment. But if you can weave in native plants that could have a global impact in the world, I think having the two would be a great balance and a great thing for especially the local farmers who especially the ones who have been subsistence farmers for many, many years and generations, taking that core knowledge and then incorporating that on a commercial scale would be immense, I think, in the agriculture industry in Africa. And then to show those foreign investors and farmers what they can do, I think can then perpetuate and basically propel the ag industry immensely in Africa, taking the knowledge, the native knowledge and native plants, and then turning that into tourism and investor interest. There's a huge potential for growth in those areas. So I think, there's definitely an opportunity. And then for the diaspora to see this, they talk about brain drain all the time. Well, what if these brains see those potentials? The drain then gets funneled back into the homeland.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. We appreciate you. Now, please tell the people how they can reach out to you and what they can get from you in return for your time. I'm talking about what are your services. I'm saying, in essence, advertise yourself in these few seconds so we can pass it around.
Absolutely. So I'm On LinkedIn, that's where you can find me the most. The storytelling strategist. Go to LinkedIn, look for me, look for my moniker, the storytelling strategist, Jay Pasqua. I also have a book on Amazon and in a lot of other places. It's The Rules of Engagement in Storytelling. And what I try to help people do is to help you tell your story. Everyone out there, if you have a service, if you have a product, you have a story to tell. And that story will set you apart from the rest of all the services and products that exist on the market today. And if you're in the digital space, you need to stand out. And your story will help you do that. And I can help you get there.
So much for that. I appreciate you. Right. Dr. Kechi, please tell the people how to reach out to you and what is your final take very briefly in few seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, my final take is that we need to invest. We need to invest our knowledge from all the trips, the travels, and the tourist, or rather tourism experiences that we've had, or all the tours that we've had. You know, we need to bring it back to the roots where we come from. There are also other values that the people from the other Western worlds can also imbibe and bring to their countries as well, not just for those in the global south, taken from the global north, which of course most times is developmental and it can help. Like we know about mental health issues. We've looked at studies on mental health issues. We've discovered that most times it happens in developed countries. Now, because of the, what do you call it now? Social media. A lot is also happening down the global south in line with mental health issues. So I think this is a very good point on the junction to conclude to say that we need to reclaim our identity through travel. We need to identify also with our people where we travel to. As I wrap up, last year I went to Peterborough. I met a man from my country, and three of his sons. None of them was, speaking a Nigerian language. And I told him, I said, you speak so much. You were even blessing the kola nuts and the refreshment that we ate in our local language, in our language dialect. And he said, oh wow, even if they would even if they will learn their mother's language, their mother is another language group in Nigeria, while he is another language group, close to my own language group. And I went to his son and asked him. He said, "No, Daddy doesn't teach us." I went back to him and said, "You see, your son has said you don't teach him." I said, "This is the time that you need to bring that." Since he said, even if he can speak my wife's language, because I speak my wife's language, but my wife doesn't speak mine. So I want them to learn my wife's language. I said, okay, that is a point. So you see how my travel has contributed to the discussion of promoting our roots so that they will not forget their identity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kechi. We appreciate you. All right, Don Hoff, what is your final take here? And tell the people also how they can reach out to you.
Similar to Jay, people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there under Don Hough, Hough. I'm founder of Grow Mobile that we've been working on for some time now. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go to growmobilenow.com. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be part of this. This tourism can be extremely powerful, and I know it can be life-changing for people in the diaspora. Would be for me if I were able to travel and to have some of the experiences that my colleagues have had. So thank you, Obi, for having me here. and for helping to facilitate this conversation. Thank you.
So much for that, Don. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your sharing here. Of course, also the same go for all of you. I know that you could be doing other things now, but you dedicate your time to be here. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much. And of course, thanks to all of you that have listened to the end of this conversation. We'll pick it up from here in next 2 weeks. Bye-bye, everyone.